Hello, and welcome to episode 198, all about masculinity in Lord of the Rings, being the 198th part of That's What I'm Talking About. My name is Mary Clay. If that's too complicated for you, just call me MC. I've been experiencing the world of Tolkien for the first time, and right now I'm doing whatever I want to, including talking about masculinity in Lord of the Rings. Today, I am joined by...
I'm sorry. This is your best intro you've ever had.
Up.
Keep going. Don't stop. Keep going.
Today I am joined by the obscure, what's your name, TikTok guy.
I've been on this show
Don Marshall.
like 4 times.
It's a long title. I can never get it right. I never remember it.
It's fine. It's the obscure Lord of the Rings facts guy.
Facts guy, that's it.
It's fine. I can be the obscure TikTok guy. I'm on other platforms, but like barely. Although I'm mad at Instagram, but I'm always mad at Mark Zuckerberg. But that's a conversation for another podcast. Anyway, hi. Thank you so much for having me. I'm very excited to be here.
Woo! Thanks for coming on. Before we officially started the podcast, you were saying, maybe I should get into podcasting because you don't, with podcasting, there's no official comment section and you can just talk about whatever which is, I mean, what we're doing with this episode.
I love it.
Talk about whatever you want. Trolls will have to, probably the only trolls I'll get from this episode is when I make a post about, hey, go listen to this episode on Instagram or on Twitter. And they're like, a woman talking about masculinity. And I'll be like,
well, no, that's, you know what, actually, I saw an amazing TikTok by someone, it's a podcast, I completely forget what it's called, but like the sentiment was, you as a woman are like the most qualified to talk about masculinity because you experience it.
I am.
Yeah. Like
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. But like, again, that is not my own idea. It is just a sentiment I carry from people much smarter than me. And then I hope to influence people. I put big air quotes for those listening on the podcast. Hope to influence all of your thoughts and minds to be more feminine. Feminist.
I also would like to add that I would like to think I'm also a little more qualified to discuss these topics because this was a part of my degree that I paid billions of dollars to earn. And the story is that I accidentally minored in women and gender studies.
Did you really?
Because I was taking so many classes that had to do with this minor that I got to my senior year and realized that I just had to take the intro to gender studies class and then I would have completed the minor.
That's amazing.
So so I was like, I mean, I might as well. And then, so I have a communication studies degree it's the most liberal arts thing you'll ever hear. A communication studies major, double minoring in anthropology and women and gender studies. And what am I doing with that degree today, kids? I'm making a podcast about Lord of the Rings.
To be fair, I majored in journalism and I got so burnt out I left after like less than a decade. Well, was it a decade? Anyway, doesn't matter.
You know what? You have to go because I graduated college dead set on working in the nonprofit sector. And I did that for about 3.5, 4 years and was absolutely done with it because it's actually... Anyone who's worked in the nonprofit sector, you'll know that it's actually a very like toxic environment because you're very low paid and you're expected to put your entire heart and soul. You're expected to have no work-life boundaries. Then I entered the corporate world and I love it. Benefits are great.
Yeah.
So the point is, don't follow. No, actually, I think you do need to follow your dreams and ambitions because sometimes it's only through following those that you realize this isn't right for me.
And also by also simultaneously realizing that sometimes the thing you thought was your dream was actually just capitalism lying to you.
Yeah.
Anyway, sorry, this is about feminism, capitalism. Not the worst.
Well, actually, the two are related, but we are here to talk about the concept and adaptations. What word am I looking for? Whatever, of masculinity and how Tolkien writes about it through his characters, because Lord of the Rings, even though it was written in a completely different century, which is so crazy, is very often held up as really positive examples of masculinity.
Hey, I'm really sorry. My dogs won't stop barking. Do you mind if I just bring them up real quick? Can you give me...
Go do them, and I'll find this thing that I wanted to read.
Thank you. Yeah, give me like a minute.
And while Dawn's doing that, I'm going to talk to you about toxic masculinity. Hey there, it's me, Mary Clay from the future. I didn't like the way that I discussed and introduced this topic in the recording, so I'm redoing that now because I want to be as succinct about what I'm talking about rather than discombobulated, which is what I was originally. Imagine that. Toxic masculinity can be a very intimidating and scary sounding phrase. It might be something that you roll your eyes at if you have seen it in headlines or you've seen it in the peripherals of other controversial and hot button topics. But it's important to talk about. If we keep avoiding this issue, it's only going to remain an issue. And yes, it is an issue. I'm going to be real basic here and go by Oxford English Dictionary because I like how they define it. Toxic masculinity is a set of attitudes and ways of behaving stereotypically associated with or expected of men, regarded as having a negative impact on men and on society as a whole. I think that's important that they include that society as a whole. So this isn't something that just men are dealing with. This affects everyone because of how they act and that their actions have consequences to the people around them, which if you've ever existed, you've probably existed near a man. It also says that destructive messages associated with toxic masculinity can lead to men feeling entitled to engage in violence against women. So that's another reason why it's important to talk about this. Again, it affects everyone. It's dangerous. It is an unhealthy way of living. Now, I think a lot of people are saying, oh, so it's bad to be a man. It's bad to be masculine. No, we're just saying that there are negative ways of being masculine, just like there are negative ways of being any kind of a person. There are bad ways of being a teacher. There are bad ways of being a mailman. There are bad ways of being a podcast host. Hey, it's me. I try my best. Toxic masculinity sets these very narrow-minded, constricting ways that men should live their lives. It perpetuates ideas like men can't cry, men can't show emotion. The only emotion that is socially acceptable for men to express is anger, and acceptable expression is violence. It says that men can't be affectionate with other people, especially not other men, that men can't wear pink. These kinds of things that just make it sound like, wow, those kinds of things sound like life would be very difficult to live like that. So that's why it's important to know that those are not the only ways to be a man, and that there's more to being a man than what toxic masculinity tries to tell society and boys and men. And some of those ways of being a man are being Samwise Gamgee and Aragorn. Does Aragorn have a last name? Aragorn, son of Arathorn. There we go. So that is the quick and dirty of what this notion of toxic masculinity is, because we're going to bring it up during our conversation. And I want you to know exactly what we're talking about. Okay, I think that's better than what I originally recorded. So back to the conversation where Dawn and I talk about how great Tolkien did at writing positive representations of masculinity. Woo, that was a lot of heavy stuff. Didn't mean to go that deep, but
no, let's do it.
It's a deep concept, you know?
It is. Although I will say I am a little, I don't know if we'll get into it later, but do you also have Faramir on that list with Sam and book Faramir at the very least?
So
I know how you feel about movie Faramir.
There will actually be the second half of this episode will be dedicated to Faramir.
Oh.
But yeah, Faramir is number one top sweet cinnamon roll boy. He can do no wrong.
Because I was wondering, because you said you were going to have another conversation with someone else. I'm like, she loves Faramir. I watch you defend him religiously. over multiple months.
He's the character that I'm like, I could give a TED talk about him. And so I think that's what the second half of this episode will turn into.
Fantastic.
So yes, do not fear, Faramir is coming up. But yeah, so Sam and Aragorn, I think, are, when people are thinking about Lord of the Rings, they're the two of the main characters, two of our main heroes. And they're also wildly different characters in terms of how they express masculinity and like the things that they do and the things that they're afraid of and that they're in the moments in which they're brave, and those things are all wildly different. And so that's what's so great about the characters that Tolkien has created, is that there's such a wide-ranging spectrum, I should say a wide-ranging spectrum of male characters. The women are just like in forests and they're hot.
I will
Which
say
is cool. We love to see it, but that's
do.
always been my main gripe, and what I try to explain to other people when they're like, but there are really great female characters in Lord of the Rings. I'm like, yes, but they're not this wide-ranging spectrum of like there are for men. There that just does not exist in Lord of the Rings.
Which I think I really appreciate then a little bit more so now that we're talking about it, what Peter Jackson did with like the different forms of femininity in representing these three, I say three, but there's technically four, except Rosie is in like exactly
this
6.
is Shelob erasure.
Yes, I would love to erase Shelob from unless if you want to get like real obscure, there is a video game called Middle Earth Shadow of War where they
never mind.
Reveal. Have you played it?
I am getting ready to play Shadow of Mordor.
Oh, okay. I won't. Oh,
yeah, it's okay. You could spoil whatever you want to. So I'm only going to do like one episode about that, because otherwise we'll be here doing this show forever.
You may actually want to bring me back for part 2 of this conversation after you play the prologue of the second Shadow game.
Isn't she like, she's like a hot like spider woman?
Yeah, Shelob shapeshifts from a giant spider into like this really ethereal hot pale woman. I don't like it's very like generic pretty video game lady energy, and just not to take anything away from the designers, I'm sure they did a great job. It just felt so out of left field. Like if you thought Rings of Power
am I attracted to this spider?
It's like, what am I feeling right now? This is some Dark Souls level like confusion here. Anyway, sorry. All of this is to say, yes, Shelob, I would be okay if Shelob got erased, and technically there is a woman. It's like when they made spoilers for one of the Harry Potter things, one of the prequels. Didn't they make I didn't actually see it. I think they made Nagini a woman, and she was like a shapeshifter or something that got.
It's a lot of.
Does that make more sense? We can cut all of this.
that person has done. Okay, but anyway, back to what you were saying.
Sorry,
this is what I think you were saying. Is that Peter Jackson did a good job of expanding on these 3 very basic characters. Arwen, who isn't really even in the books at all. She's just she doesn't get much of an appearance until you get to the appendices. And Peter Jackson did do a good job for what he had of being like, okay, Arwen can be very ethereal and strong in her own way, but she's still also just like our hot elven lady. And then Galadriel's Galadriel. Like it's Kate Blanchett. Expanding on Éowyn's roles and showing her being a more, because he could, the way that the books are written, he when where are they? Edoras, when they leave to go to Helm's Deep, they leave her behind to keep guard over, I don't know, the elderly,
the children,
remains of the city, to be like, make sure we don't get, I don't know, ransacked or whatever. He easily could have been like, Éowyn stays behind, but he like chose to have her be a more active participant, and that's great. What are we talking about? Oh yeah, men. I love that.
Sorry.
We're forgetting to talk about the men in the episode about men.
So Samwise Gamgee.
He, as I wrote in my first point, he is a gardener and he saved the world. The end. like
what else is there to say? What else is there to say? I mean, the Hobbit is just, he's so emblematic of, I think, everything that is so great about Tolkien in his both simplicity, but also his sense of, like, I don't want to say accomplishment, but like the human spirit, even though he's not human. Because I'm a big World War I history guy. So
you're gonna say I'm a big World War I fan.
No. I'm very much not a fan of war.
I know what you mean. Yeah, in history
but just because of my love of Tolkien, I sort of got sidetracked a little bit by World War I and sort of took a deep dive. And you kind of see, like, obviously you see Tolkien's influences throughout, but like I look at World War I and then I look at Samwise Gamgee and I'm like, oh, this is what Tolkien was fighting to protect, and it is all embodied in Samwise Gamgee and the Shire and the little the short small person being able to change the world, the 3.5 foot character being able to say, I will spit in the face of God.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because it's this, ultimately is not a story in which Aragorn is the one who saves the world. Aragorn, I would say, very typical hero character. Mm-hmm. It's about the literal little guys going to do their thing and save the world. And it's because of who they are at the core of, like, their souls that they are able to accomplish it. That, like, if it wasn't for, for example, what Frodo needed when they are in Mordor and they're in the deep of it, and you're reading Return of the King, and there are these two terrible chapters back to back. One of them is just called, like, the Land of Shadow or something, and it's just them trudging. It's like 7 pages, and they're just trudging, and they're depressed, and Frodo's whining, and it's bad. It's depressing. But in that moment, what Frodo needed was encouragement and love and sympathy and affection. And not to say that, like, Aragorn couldn't give him those things, but the person most suited to help Frodo and to give Frodo what he needed in those final moments before destroying the ring, it was Sam who was able to provide it. Yeah. And of course, ultimately leading to the iconic moment, I can't carry it for you, but I can carry you.
I have trouble putting into words what that line did to me as a child, and like,
when I was flipping through the book trying to find, like, moments that I wanted to talk about, I kind of forget about this moment, and then I read it, and then I just started crying.
Yeah.
Just spontaneously burst into tears.
I don't blame you. It's one of those moments where, like, for me as a guy growing up, obviously I was influenced by the masculinity of the late 90s and then the 2000s in ways that, like, I didn't even realize that I had to, like, deconstruct a lot later in therapy. But, like, you look at moments in that, like, stick with you that are truly of a brotherhood, of a camaraderie, of a true love between two men, and not really in the romantic kind. And I often wish that English had more ways to say the word love, because there are so many different ways to, like, because, like, it's affection, it's admiration, it's adoration, it's all of these things, but, like, at the heart of it, it is this really beautiful moment between just two guys helping each other, and one of them is down and needs a hand up. And I can't think of a more emblematic moment in that series. And now that I'm thinking about it, probably modern media that is, a better example of the kind of positive masculinity that we're kind of striving for. Mm-hmm. At least I am.
I should add that this episode is being recorded before the release of the Barbie movie, so I think we will see. I'm so excited to see Ryan Gosling be Ken. I don't think Y'all understand what that is going to do for the trajectory of society.
You know what's great as well? I found out a couple of days ago that there's a Christopher Nolan movie called Oppenheimer coming out the same day.
So actually, it's been the release of Oppenheimer has been delayed 6 months. Or maybe not 6 months. Maybe this isn't true. I just saw this a couple weeks ago. Maybe it's not true anymore, but I saw that Oppenheimer was the release was being delayed. And like, obviously this isn't the reason, but everyone was making so many jokes about, because they knew that they had no chance against Barbie. They knew that they would just get crushed in the box offices.
As far as I can tell, their release dates are still the same on July 21st.
So that was that was just a wild rumor or something I saw.
I think so, yes. Oh my god. Oh god, can you imagine if that was true? Sorry, we're getting off topic again. But yes, all of this is to say,
I'm the one who brought us off topic. It's fine. But yeah, no, you're totally right that that's what makes this story so timeless and special, is that Tolkien had such a way of creating these characters that I don't think are unmatched in modern media. I mean, like, I'm sure I could like end this conversation and like go back and look at what I've watched and enjoyed. I've been like, yes, I love them. Mm-hmm. I love that character. I love this, movie or whatever. But that's why these movies and these stories stand out so well against the backdrop of like at the same you and I grew up at an age where there is a wildly popular franchise about fast cars. And it has, I believe they're releasing their 10th sequel. Yeah. Like, that's the world we're living in. It's fast cars go fast.
It is. I will say, if you want to talk masculinity, the Fast and the Furious series is an entirely different conversation, but I love how unhinged that series has become, to the point where like it went from, I think they were stealing like DVD players or something in the first one, and everyone's like, wow, this Paul Walker's kind of a cool guy, and everyone's muscly and tough, and yeah, this is what a man should be. And now they're just like dropping tanks out of airplanes. And John Cena's there, and so is Jason Momoa.
It also brought us the best naming conventions for movies ever with Too Fast, Too Furious.
Yes. No, and also, but don't forget the third one, Tokyo Drift, which is technically a prequel, because I don't have time to get into all of this, and it has nothing to do with the Lord of the Rings. But
I keep detracting us. Yeah, so Sam.
Yeah, so Sam drives the Dodge Charger, and he goes.
It would have been a lot faster if they had a car, I'll tell you what. Maybe it should have been the two Towers, Too Furious.
Oh, God. Oh, no.
Yeah. I stand by that.
Yeah.
So Sam is also a gardener, and I think that's a very important trait that like we kind of joke about a lot, and they make a great joke of this in, maybe not joke, but like lighthearted moment, a little bit of humor in the Two Towers movie, when Faramir is like, and what are you, his bodyguard? And he goes, I'm his gardener.
Yep.
And then at the end of the movie, when they're, being let go, Faramir goes like, in the Shire, gardeners must be held in very high esteem. Yeah. And I don't think he was joking. I think he was being serious, being like, wow, gardeners must be like top tier of society in the Shire. If they're like you.
Yeah. Yeah. And honestly, look at the landscaping of the Shire. Gardeners should be held in high esteem if they're not already. They 100% should be.
Who do you think mows those lawns?
Oh, God. You know what? I bet you they all have goats. I bet you they don't need to mow the lawn.
Goats.
It's just goats everywhere. Goats. South Farthing, East Farthing, whatever cardinal direction.
You know what? That's a question that I don't. This is one of the things that I've lamented about being in the Tolkien fandom, is that Tolkien obviously wrote an explanation for pretty much everything. Yeah. So there's not a lot of crazy wackadoodle theories you can come up with, but asking how did they maintain the lawns of the grass, the fields of the Shire. They are so plentiful.
They are. I think you gotta just look back to like 18th century England, where it was like farmland and some dude with a sickle just going back and forth. And
that's it. Yeah, that's
yeah,
the thing. Anyway.
yeah. And also lots of children, so that the farm, could be maintained. Sam and Rosie had 13
That's why
kids.
they had children to mow the lawns.
That's why they had kids back then.
And you know what? That's why they have kids still today.
Yeah.
I think that's the main reason that my brother was born, was so that he could mow the lawn one day. But seriously, this trait of him being a gardener, I think, is really great, because gardening has to do with being patient, being gentle, being you have to be very intelligent to know what, different types of plants and what they need. You have to be very nurturing. You have to be very attentive. You're literally sowing seeds for them to grow, and you're trying to, help things to bloom in environments where maybe there's too much sun or there's too much rain or something, like you're trying to help these things grow and build a better world for the people who are coming after you. That's just like not someone you see go on these insane adventures a lot of times, is like, I'm a gardener and I'm going to save the world.
Yeah, no, you don't. And I often think about like the profession of Sam, because it is so important. But think about what happens if Tolkien makes him the bartender or makes him the sheriff. And it's like, oh yes, well, of course I'm going to go with him. I'm the big strong hobbit that protects everybody else. Or I'm a rough and tumble barkeep, and I've seen lots of people walk into my bars, and like, the fact that he is a gardener is so important, because it speaks to his character traits and also how he's going to treat other people. Not that
yes.
yeah, I mean, not that your profession is indicative of like you as a person, but like there's a certain level of, let's just say this, I'd be a terrible gardener. I'd get bored. I've killed every plant I've ever had. RIP that bonsai tree that I lost a few years back, and I know I would be bad at it. But for someone like Sam, it is emblematic of his character, very much so.
Yeah. One great example I love is the gifts that Galadriel gives to the Fellowship.
Yeah.
They changed it in the movies, and in the movies, what's his name? Sam gets elven rope. This is, I don't know, it's just I think it's a very random thing that they're like, rope. He gets rope.
Yeah, I mean, rope is kind of important in the books. Sam mentions it and forgets, and
yeah, it's because I think they chose to make that his gift in the movies, because in the book he has like a minor panic attack when it's just him and Frodo, and he's like, I don't have rope. Oh my god. Oh my god. Oh my god. And then he's like, wait, no, I got some from Laurie, and it's fine.
It's good.
He's like,
fine. It's all good. It's fine.
Yeah, and then they need it for Gollum and what. Anyway, but in the book, Galadriel gives him. It sounds really terrible when you just say it, but she gives him a box of dirt.
Yes, she does.
And you're like, what? It's kind of like how I you kind of like laugh or be like, that's strange when you hear Gimli gets 3 strands of her hair, and you're like, that's weird. But when you get into the actual like meaning of the gift, of the exchange, it's like, wow, that's actually really beautiful.
Huge implication. Huge
so
implications.
So Sam is standing amongst this line of 9 people, I don't know, 5 of which are extremely, brave, cool action people. The other 3 are hobbits, one of whom is Pippin,
Oh, hey now. As someone who identified with Pippin, I'm not saying you're wrong.
Look, there's a reason Galadriel didn't give them knives or swords. She gave them belts.
Yeah.
She's like, I think you'll do more harm to yourself if I give you a knife. I'm giving you a belt.
Yeah.
Don't.
That's a really good point. Tolkien really could have made a cop-out and just said, yeah, I'm just going to forget Tom Bombadil. I'm cutting him, and I'm just going to make the swords be obtained by Galadriel, because of course she has them. But no, No, Tom Bombadil's still in the books. Also,
Yeah.
another fun, positive masculine force for good in the world.
This
I
guy
think.
who's just like a man of nature and
just
is
chilling
like
out.
he's like, I'm just out here trying to live my best life amongst the animals and the trees.
Have
and
you
sometimes
seen-
the trees might try and kill you.
That happens every once in a while. Trees do try and that's true here too. They're just not sentient, like in Lord of the Rings. Have you seen the Soviet stage play version?
Yes.
So you've seen the Tom
Yes.
Bombadil Goldberry scenes. For those that haven't seen it, and correct me if my interpretation is maybe misguided, but Tom Bombadil in that adaptation feels very much like bi wife energy and wholesome, and
I feel like in any adaptation he has that energy. I mean, like it's just any of these guys that have these like hot nymph wives wives that it's just like
yeah, no, that tracks.
So anyway, Sam, So anyway, my point being is that he's standing amongst this line of people, and Aragorn is given a sheath for a sword, and I think something else. I don't remember.
In the books, it's the Elisar
stone, that thingy, the stone or whatever. Legolas is given a bow. Boromir, I think, is given like a fancy belt or something. I don't know. Like they're given garb for like their armor and their gear, and then Frodo gets. Sam gets this box of dirt, and you're like, what the hell? And inside of it is a sapling seed, and Galadriel is like, you'll need this later. And it's so, I don't know what Galadriel does and doesn't know. She knows things that are not and will not yet, come to pass, or whatever the line is.
Hang on, let me channel my inner Kate Blanchett. Things that are, things that will be, and some that have not yet come to. No, I lost it.
Something like that. Yeah, that moment. So maybe she knows that, like, when they return to the Shire, again, we're just speaking in book universe, when they return to the Shire, it's a state of destruction. Trees have been cut down. Everything is dying. Everything that when Sam left, he's a gardener. He tended to everything. This is his domain. And then they come back and it's all destroyed. Tolkien's like not so subtle commentary on like the dangers of industrialization.
Not so subtle as being very kind. Very kind. It's more like, hey, I'm going to hit you over the head with this shovel metaphor.
Yeah, like, hey, you just read this 1,000-page novel. Let's talk about the dangers of industrialization.
I told you I don't like allegories. It's a theme, John. Calm down.
And after the scouring of the Shire, after they've after Saruman has been brutally murdered and bad guys have been run out of town, they now need to rebuild the Shire. And Sam takes this dirt, and because this is from, I believe it's from Galadriel's like personal garden.
Yeah. I think that's, if not, it's just Lothlorien.
It's just like magic dirt.
I want magic dirt, even if it's not from Lothlorien.
Yeah.
Just give me any kind of magic dirt.
And so he takes like a tiny sprinkle, and he like goes around the Shire, maybe not the whole Shire, but he goes around and like sprinkles it in places that need growth and need help. And then he takes the sapling and he plants it where the party tree had been cut down. The party tree is where they had all the parties. But like that's where Bilbo gave his speech, and so this was like a very iconic tree. I mean, like, I feel like how many of us grew up and there was a tree in your neighborhood and then one day it got cut down and you're like, oh my God,
I had one of those.
This is what climate change is talking about. This is global warming happening before my very 8-year-old eyes. And so he plants the sapling in its place and nurtures it into and is able to like rebuild the Shire until it's flourishing. And that's like an extremely valuable thing that Galadriel recognized in him, being like, this is something you care about. This is an obstacle that I believe you're going to encounter in the future. And I believe this is extremely powerful. Just like this fancy bow in Legolas's hands is powerful, this box of dirt is extremely useful in your hands. And I believe that you will know what to do with it.
It's one of those wonderful moments where, Tolkien's foresight is so great, but also I can't help but wonder, because I forget things that happen in books a lot that I'm currently reading. So I can't help but wonder what it was like when someone who had been reading The Return of the King when it was being released and being like, wait, Sam got dirt? Where is this even coming from? It's oh, right, Galadriel. That was how many years ago? And I love Tolkien's forethought into all of this and how the gifts establish the characters. Whereas, Peter Jackson didn't give Boromir a gift. Just straight up
that's
ignored.
The best. It makes me laugh so. Oh my god, it's so great.
Yeah.
And eat to the point that even the belts that Merry and Pippin are given, even they come back because that's what they find. It's their wee belts, and that's what they find in the orc pile. But Boromir, no, nothing. For
you
him.
don't get any. You don't get anything.
4 for you. You go, Glen Coco, and none for Boromir. Like Frodo is given the vial of Galadriel. Aragorn is given the stone of Elisar, and none for Boromir. I think in the book he's given a belt or a sword sheath or something. And they are all given their cloaks, so he does at least get something. But it is very funny.
It's one of those things. Oh my gosh.
And none for Boromir.
And none for Boromir. So I'm still laughing at Glen Coco. That was great.
And also, lest we forget that when Sam is kind of under the temptation of the ring, and the future that he sees is a future in which he is the hero, and he is seeing himself as Sam the strong, Sam the brave. He sees a valley of flourishing trees and flowers and fruits, and then Sauron has a valley of fire and destruction. So when Sam, and I made this reference when I first read this, 3 years ago now, and I'm making it still to this day. In a Harry Potter musical, there is a song between Quirrell and Voldemort. And Voldemort is talking about, when I rule the world, there will be snakes, and I'll have rule over everyone. And then Quirrell goes, when I rule the world, I'll plant flowers.
Yeah.
And that is Sam.
God. That is such a deep cut. When I rule the world, I'll plant flowers. When I rule the world, I'll have snakes.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
And then the next line is Quirrell going, and Jane Austen novels, which is also still Sam energy.
Oh, very much so. Very much so. I feel like Jane Austen and I was going to say Sean Astin. Although I feel like they'd get along too. I feel like Samwise Gamgee and Sean Astin would get along really great. Yeah. I'm trying to think of the other line that is so emblematic of the Sauron. Oh, it's, you like plotting a garden and I like plotting to kill.
Yes, exactly. And so I think given that the ring is able to hone in on people's such inner thoughts and desires.
Mm-hmm.
You know what's interesting that I'm just now realizing? Do we ever know what is it about what is the ring drawing on when Frodo is under its temptation? What is Frodo imagining? Why is Frodo being so tempted by the ring? What does he think he's going to do with it?
Oh,
Frodo's mind is just empty.
Yeah,
that's why we never.
I don't know if we get the same insight the way we do with Sam for Frodo, because obviously he's wearing it a lot, and we don't really get. Personally, I think Sam kind of saw that because they're in Mordor, because Bilbo wears the ring a lot, and he's not I want to take over the Shire. No, he just.
I think that's more. Tolkien didn't know that this ring was going to become
evil. Yeah, that too. But also one of the main it's one of the main ways that Tolkien shows Sam's character when he puts on the ring, but we get insight into Frodo's character in other ways. But that's a really good point. Like,
yeah.
So
anyway,
cool.
Also, when I, just like a side note, that when I was like flipping through the books, looking for stuff to talk about, I found the line that I had highlighted. It's when Frodo has just been seemingly killed by Shelob and Sam has warded her off, and he's standing over his body trying to figure out what to do. And it says, "I've made up my mind," he kept saying to himself, but he had not. And that just made me laugh so much because that's me.
Yeah.
Entirely.
Whole vibe.
And then one last thing about Sam and his relation to Frodo, and then Grant, I'll add a big caveat that you can view them as platonic, you can view them as romantic. To me, it doesn't matter. It is only what is important to you and how you wish to view them and what makes it more meaningful for you as you, the viewer, you, the reader, are reading it, because you are not Tolkien, you are you, and it doesn't matter what other people say. If you find more meaning out of these characters and their relationship by viewing them as platonic, that's awesome. If you find more meaning because you view them as romantic, that's cool too. They have such a deep connection. Sam is such a loving, caring person that Frodo recognizes he will, as long as Frodo is there, Sam will always be worrying about him. Sam will always be preoccupied with caring for Frodo. And Frodo is like, I want him to have his own happy life with his wife and a billion kids. And so he leaves this plane of existence because their connection is so strong. Also, Frodo's deeply depressed, and there's kind of the only place that he can go on to have any kind of peace.
Yeah, no. There's no happiness in the Shire for him anymore. It has been saved, but not for me.
Yeah, and their parting, of course, leads to an extremely important line said by Gandalf. They are all, they're hugging goodbye. Frodo kisses Merry, Pippin, and Sam as they're saying goodbye, and Gandalf says, "I will not say, do not weep, for not all tears are an evil." So we have freaking Gandalf the White at this point, at the end of this 1 billion-page novel quest, most epic story, written by man at this point, and Gandalf is saying, not all tears are an evil. It's okay to cry.
It is okay to cry. It really is. And I think that is so, you look at Tolkien's life, you look at what he had been through up to that point with losing his parents and the war, and watching most of his friends die in that war, and then coming back to, I often wonder, like, what Tolkien would have been had he not fought in the war, and like how the Lord of the Rings would be different, because obviously the story was in his head for a while, but the camaraderie and the brotherhood and the, I don't want to say positive masculinity that comes out of war, but the kinds of people that will stand by you no matter what, and that is Sam, and sometimes to a fault. Right, because Samwise Gamgee will never stop worrying about Frodo, and Frodo's like,
he's an anxious boy. It's fine.
Yeah, he is. Aren't we all? We're all just a couple of anxious boys here. But you know who's not anxious? Aragorn. I'm sorry, you can cut that.
I think he is still anxious. I think he's anxious a lot. I think he's like, oh my God, I'm a 3-year-old child and I have the weight of the world on my shoulder. Actually, no, he doesn't find out until he's like 20. But anyway.
Yeah, he's in it. Still, listen, if you found out you had the weight of the world on your shoulders at 20, I'm not sure I could do it now. And I'm many years
your foster dad is like, hey, so I know that I raised you. It's like that scene in Easy A where what's her name? Emma Stone's younger brother is talking about like, well, obviously, like, that has nothing to do with me because I'm adopted. And Stanley Tucci, the dad, goes like, what? Who told you? And like, that's kind of what I imagine happening in this conversation of Elrond being like, son, I have something to tell you. You're not an elf. You're a mortal man, and you are actually the most important mortal man known to everyone. And Aragorn's like, yeah, I'm obviously not an elf. And Elrond's just like, who told you?
You've given me so many amazing...
I'm going to make that
you going to make that a TikTok?
Who told you? Stanley Tucci. Just kidding.
Yeah.
Aragorn, I started out my notes on this with, where to begin. Because for me, he is not to say that Sam isn't great. I just said a lot of really wonderful things about a character that honestly is, if I was ranking my favorite characters of Lord of the Rings, Sam wouldn't necessarily be at the top of the list.
Really?
I find him annoying.
Oh, okay. Well, I
can still recognize these amazing qualities and the importance that he has in like the larger world.
Respect. Respect.
I still find him deeply annoying. He's just so needy. Anyway.
Wow. Okay. We're going to fight about this later. That's another episode. But anyway, carry on. It's
fine. I'll add you to the list of
Tolkien
talkers I fight with.
You and New better have beef. You and me with Sam.
It's fine. For me, he is the perfect example of how someone can be, because Sam is, I would say, in a lot of ways, not traditionally masculine. Mm-mm. He cries a lot. He is afraid a lot of the times. He doesn't know how to fight. So in a lot of ways, he doesn't have these traditional masculine qualities. When I imagine guys who are like, who are watching Lord of the Rings and being like, oh, I can't relate to Sam because he's not a real man. Aragorn's a real man. And he's a quote unquote real man in very positive ways. And so when these like super intense guys get into Lord of the Rings and they're talking about it, I feel like I'm like, you're being tricked. Because Aragorn is actually, you're holding up Aragorn as being like this example of what a man is supposed to be like. And I'm like, yeah, he is what men are supposed to be like. He's very strong and noble and brave, and he is a leader. And yes, those are like these traditionally masculine qualities.
He also kisses his homies on the forehead.
He
kisses his male friends on the forehead.
They hug. And the ways in which he is traditionally masculine do not harm other people. He, for example, in after the Battle of Minas Tirith, whatever it's called,
Pelennor Fields?
He waits to go inside Minas Tirith. He is rightfully the king of Gondor. And he doesn't want to step on anyone's toes. And he's like, you know what? I don't want to cause a ruckus.
And he would.
I'm not the focus right now. I am not important. What's important is this larger goal of how can we support Frodo and Sam over in Mordor. And so like that's something that he's so great.
He is. He really is.
He is also, we talked a bit about this in the Women of Lord of the Rings episode because Andy from Tolkien with Friends picked Ioreth.
Love Andy. Ooh, okay.
Yes, and I was like, you have the entire Silmarillion as well. I opened it up to the Silmarillion because the Women of Lord of the Rings gets a bit scant.
Yeah.
And she picked Ioreth, and so we talked about the Houses of the Healing, and it's so valuable that the king is seen also healing people, nurturing people, tapping into what Faramir, Éowyn, and is it Merry? No, it's Pippin. No, it's Merry. It's Merry who's in
it's
there.
Merry.
Yeah. And being like seeing into their soul and bringing them back from the brink of death and darkness and being like, I know you were just super depressed, but like you have things to live for in this world. Side note, just always going to bring up that like Faramir wakes up and is like, oh my God, my king, I'll do whatever you want. Éowyn wakes up and is like, oh my God, my brother, I'm so glad to see you. And Mary wakes up and is like, is it lunch? Where's food?
Priorities.
He's like, I'm hungry. Is it time for breakfast?
Yes. Yes.
And that's so that's just like extremely important that, especially for a broken nation, that these people are now seeing their king. Because remember what their previous leader just did.
Little bit of self-immolation there to make everybody feel like They're right as rain.
So the bar is pretty low for
On the
leaders
floor.
of
the
Gondor.
floor.
And then this guy comes in and he has to be brought into the city because he doesn't feel it's right. He doesn't feel that this is the right time for him to take back his position. And then he has this obscure knowledge about this plant. So Aragorn is just like, A plus, whatever. We love him. We love to see it. In the aftermath of the War of the Ring, after the ring has been destroyed and he's, the king and everything, he shows a lot of mercy in ways that maybe traditional leaders wouldn't. One example is I think he's a guard or something, Baragond.
Yes.
And he technically disobeyed orders because he refused to set Faramir on fire.
Yeah.
He's like, I'm sensing this is a bad idea.
You want to talk about positive masculinity and non-toxic masculinity? Don't set your Baragond. Don't set your friends on fire. Plain and simple.
This is perfect because I have had a meme saved from Jonathan Van Ness, and he is saying friends don't let friends do what? Use box dye. And I've been waiting for an opportunity to edit. So friends don't let friends do what? Set their sons on fire.
There you go.
Yeah. And so instead of he very well could have been exiled from Gondor and all this stuff, but instead he is made personal, I forget the exact position, but the personal guard of Faramir, and Faramir now has this extremely important title, and so he's essentially been promoted.
Yeah, Faramir becomes Faramir. Actually, I think it's a fun loophole that I think, if I'm remembering this correctly, he technically is exiled, but because his exile is to protect Faramir, because Faramir becomes the Prince of Ithilien. They both go to Ithilien, and it's this is exactly what I wanted. This is amazing. Thank you so much for exiling me. Thanks, new king. Yay.
Yeah. And maybe the way that Aragorn did that, maybe he did that because he knew that there would be people in the city who are traditional and would be like, hey, why didn't you exile this guy who, technically committed treason? You're, whatever. It's I did. I just exiled him to this beautiful land.
You're going to Disney World.
And he is serving our prince, yeah. And then, of course, especially everything about Boromir's death, both in the movie and in the book.
Yeah.
Because they both have different, the movie has obviously a lot more emotion added to it than in the book, where what's his name, Aragorn, just goes and finds Boromir, and they have 2 words of exchange, and Aragorn's like, where did he go? And then it was and Boromir said nothing else, for he was gone. And then that's how he dies.
Yeah.
But Boromir is, and again, we'll talk more about this later, but he's just kind of had this realization that I did the very wrong thing.
You did.
Now I'm suffering for it. And he's like, I failed. And Aragorn says, you did not fail. I believe in the book, he says you conquered.
Yes.
And Aragorn means that ultimately you realized what was happening and that the ring was pulling on you, and you, in one way or another, were able to break out of that hold. Mm-hmm. You conquered. You protected. You sort of protected Merry and Pippin. I mean, they've been taken off by orcs, but they're alive.
He tried. There was an attempt.
He tried.
And
that gold star you tried thing. Mostly, he is just, Boromir is just heartbroken that he believes that he has failed Gondor and that Minas Tirith will fall. And Aragorn's like, I will not let that happen. And then this is an expansion that is added in the movie where Boromir says, what is it? My captain, my
brother, my captain, my king. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, great.
And then
line.
dies. Forehead kiss. Aragorn is crying. And then in the book, I think it also might be an extended edition scene. I can't remember. But they give him a kind of proper send off, and Aragorn sings a, mourning song for him. And these are things that traditionally bros might not do, that they might not be smooching their bros as they're dying and holding their hands and saying, my captain, my king, and singing for them as you send them over a waterfall.
Yeah.
That detail's fine. But it's you see this guy who literally just finished having the most epic battle in which an orc threw a knife at him and that wasn't planned, and Viggo Mortensen actually flicked the knife with his sword, and that wasn't a part of the choreography. You just saw him having this epic fight, epic battle, and then immediately followed by a very heart-wrenching scene in which neither of these men really are, hiding their emotions. They're being very open and honest about who they are. And they're not mocked. This is not played down by in the movie at all. The other characters that like Legolas and Gimli show up. Legolas is like, oh my God, I've never seen death. This is weird.
Yeah.
Yeah. The end.
And it's one of those, Aragorn is such a unique character to me because there's so many different tropes of the stereotypical, king without a throne sort of thing. And there are so many ways that Tolkien could have written him. And honestly, it's one of the reasons why I think in the early 2000s, the first Peter Jackson movie, The Fellowship, was not that it wasn't as well received, but like there was a very specific vocal subset of fans that were like, you completely changed Aragorn as a character. The fact that he wants to be king is so important. And thematically for a movie, I get why Peter Jackson did it, but it is one of those things that I look at Tolkien's writings and I say, this is a very distinct choice about like a guy who is, what's that line from Wicked? Has greatness thrust upon him. And you don't really find that out until the appendices, but
Hang on, did you say that line from Wicked?
Yeah.
As in the musical with...
Yes. With Kristen Chenoweth and Idina Menzel.
That's just very funny because that's not where I know the line from.
Oh.
But where I know the line from is going to be very pretentious.
Oh?
It's a Shakespeare play.
Oh, wait a minute. And you know what? Now that we can cut all of this if you really want, but I'm going to go on a slight tangent. I think it's, are people born wicked or do they have wickedness thrust upon them? And I got the quote confused. So I might be thinking of that same Shakespeare
it's
quote.
From Twelfth Night. That's it.
Yes, it is from Twelfth Night. Yes, it is from 12th. Wow.
That was a Google search, by the way. I did.
All of the
Anyway, sorry. I was like, I didn't know that line was in Wicked. Interesting.
No, it's not in Wicked.
No,
it's
but
not
you are. Yes.
Yeah.
Some have greatness thrust upon them. Yeah.
And Aragorn takes such agency, and his character is so. God, I don't even quite know.
He's in the book. He is a very active participant in his quote unquote fate. Mm-hmm. And he's like, I understand what the world is asking of me, and I am not going to run from it. I'm not going to hide from it. I think a lot of times there are these tropes of like, especially in media, of like men not wanting to accept responsibility for either like things that they've done, for things that they've done or things that are being asked of them. And we have this character who is accepting that responsibility. He's not trying to hide from it. He's like, I know who I am. That's also just another thing, is that in the book, Aragorn is very confident, and like he knows who he is. He knows his identity. And that's, I think, very powerful, because that's also just like a general thing that a lot of people spend years and like, a lot of parts of their lives wondering like, who am I?
I'm
like,
still
what is
doing
the
that.
World, what is the world asking of me? What is my place in the world? And that's like really, I think, unique to see that we have someone who is being told his place in the world, and rather than denying it or running from it, he accepts it with a lot of like grace and humbleness too.
Oh, sure.
Because he could go around being like, I'm the king of Gondor. You have to do what I say.
Exactly. And I think that's one of those tropes that I was talking about before. Like, he could very easily just be like that stereotypical, well, I'm in charge now. So Gandalf, go away. Which I think he kind of does that in a very positive way, and not like to be mean-spirited or to be in charge. Immediately after Gandalf dies, Aragorn is like, all right, I'm going to lead you now.
And I think that's a recognition that he's like, this is what the group needs. You need, you're working on a group project, and sometimes you just need to be that person to be like, this is what's going to happen, and I'm going to take charge, and I'll put my name on everything of this group project. But yeah, Aragorn in that moment is like, he's looking around and he's like, what they need is structure. What they need is a reminder of what we're doing, because otherwise we're just going to be stuck here sitting in our grief.
Yep. And
that's not what is going to help us in the long run. What we need to do is we need to keep going. Here's our plan of action. Let's go. Yeah. That's
sorry. I'm trying to think of like,
no, you're
I'm trying to think of another example for this one. I'm just like, the thing is just, he's such a consistent character. Like, I'm trying to think of like any examples where like he falters or like he has a moment.
I know one immediately.
Oh, please.
It's the only time really that I've been angry, that I was angry with Aragorn when I was reading it. And
which is?
In Return of the King, Aragorn, I believe it's Aragorn, Gimli, and Legolas, they return to Edoras before, because they've kind of like split up a bit.
Yes.
And they return to Edoras, and he has a conversation with Éowyn, and they're saying like, yeah, we're going to the paths of the dead. Mm-hmm. And Éowyn is saying like, take me with you. I want to do something. I'm tired of just sitting around waiting and doing nothing while everyone is out fighting for our people. And Aragorn says like, well, it's not your response. Like, you're not able to come with us because you need either your brother or your uncle needs to be here to give permission. Is essentially what he says. He's like, I don't feel comfortable saying, yes, you can come with us because your brother and uncle are not here to weigh in on this.
Is that a gender thing? Is that like a masculinity thing, or is that like a right to rule it's just the only time you've been angry?
I think it could I think you can explain this away by saying, well, he's saying this because she has been told that it's her job to stay here and rule over the people left behind, and he doesn't want her to abandon that role. I think you can say that. But I think it's because of sexism. Which is fine.
Sex is okay. No, sexism is not fine, but it's, anyway. Sorry.
So like that's kind of the what, but you're totally right that like this very brief moment that you can also find another explanation for that makes it like not really about sexism. It does show that like he's just kind of all around a good guy, which I understand what you were talking about too, that like that's why Peter Jackson had to make some of these changes, is that like it's not always interesting to just watch a character who no matter what is always but like that's what he is in the movie anyway. So yeah, that's kind of all I've got to say about Sam and Aragorn. Were there any other points or quotes or moments about either of them that you wanted to bring up?
We've covered pretty much all of the things that I think are like the most important. I'm trying to rack my brain for like any small moments, but honestly, you did a wonderful job like making me remember all of the important stuff. So thank you for that. Yeah, I think just at the end of the day, just kiss your homies goodnight. That's really the main takeaway that I get from Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, kiss your homies.
Kiss your homies goodnight.
Interesting contrast in real life, which is that Viggo Mortensen when
just made out with everybody, just kissed.
Yeah, that too. But also when he would greet the other cast members, he would like headbutt them.
He would headbutt them. That's right. Don't do that. Don't headbutt your friends. Don't headbutt your male friends. That goes for any of you.
Consensual kisses only.
Yes. Maybe like if you're wearing helmets and it's very gently.
Don, thanks for coming on to talk about masculinity in Lord of the Rings as it is portrayed. I think that's the word I was looking for at the start of this episode. Portrayed. Do
you want to re-record that thing in the beginning and
let's just delete everything that we've already done and go back to the beginning.
I've got nothing to do today but clean my house. This is an excellent escape.
Thank you for coming on.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure being here.
What are you working on? Where can people find you on the internet? What do you want to tell the people?
You can stay tuned for... We have our Pride Month merchandise coming out, our Tolkien-themed Pride Month merchandise. and I'm very excited. I don't know if I will have released it by the time this is released, but just in case, very excited. We're working with the Trevor Project again, as we have the last 2 years, and I've been very grateful for all of the support that everyone here has shown Chris and I. It's a great fundraiser for a really great cause that's going to go help some of the people that need it the most. People that need it the most.
And that is where we are going to leave this week's episode. Now, as much as it pains me to say that I did 1 episode for the women of Middle-earth, and I'm doing 2 for the men, well, that's what happened. Now, I set out to do just 1 episode, but then I recorded with Dawn for over an hour, and then I recorded with next week's guest, Emily, for an hour and a half. You know what? That's on me. I should have seen it coming. I played myself. So next week, come back for the Faramir TED Talk. That's What I'm Talking About's cover art is by Vaishon Brandon. You can support him on Instagram at Vaishon Designs. You can get merch for That's What I'm Talking About by going to tpublic.com/user/talkingaboutpod. Follow the podcast on social media at talkingaboutpod, and you can follow me on Twitter and TikTok at MCWhat'sUp and on Instagram at MCTurnedDownForWhat. If you want to support the podcast, you can become a patron. Go to patreon.com/talkingaboutpod to explore the different levels of support that are available. Although if you join any level of support, you will get access to top secret information. That's right. It's so top secret that the FBI is after me. That's a lie. FBI, please don't come after me. Thank you so much to all of my patrons, but especially this week's sponsor, Johan. Johan, thank you for your continued support of the podcast. This podcast is made possible by listeners like you. Thank you. Hey, that being said, Don, do you have any parting words for the audience?
Anyway, I am Don Marshall72 on all social media platforms, but I don't use Twitter anymore because it's a terrible website.
That's cool. That's valid.
Because that is a perfect example of some toxic masculinity.
Boy, howdy is it. And that's what I'm talking about.